Professor Noah Midamba, Professor Defense and Foreign Policy and also KCA University VC. We have Dr. Mustafa Ali, Conflict Resolution Security Expert. We have George Musamali, Security Expert as well, and Byron Adera, ex-Kenya Special Forces and Security Expert as well. We've talked about the Zimbabwe change of guard. We've also talked about the Nigeria suicide attack. Let's bring it back home and talk about the chaos that we've seen in the last couple of days between and running battles between protesters and the police. And Professor, we were talking about the cordial relationship between the public and the police, and we've seen instances where protesters and the police, and that was brought up by Byron, whereby they were using sort of brute force. But in all fairness, some of those protesters were also armed. So how do you then create a balance whereby the people feel like they can actually come to the police and give information?
Well, I've taken my time to really think about this, Byron. I was in London last week, and this old city is orderly. The police are walking and greeting people. People are positive about the police role. The transportation system is moving. People respect each other. And then I'm thinking about our own city and our own place, which is not as old as compared with most of European countries. And I see chaos, absolute chaos. Let me take this discussion to the higher level a little bit in order to deal with the police, because I don't blame rank and file police, because they're not acting independently. They're being ordered into the system. But I want to say this: the law, the highest law of our land has spoken, which is the Supreme Court. We have, in the process of electing and reappointing President Uhuru, and therefore the country need to move together. This is our country, this is our place, and it is very important that we do that. And so the president must move with speed, with care and speed, to bring in around him people that are strategic thinker, people that can take on the leadership of the country and take the country to heart, and not extremists and hardliners, or people who want to make political scores. He must peel off those kind of people around him. He must move with speed to be president of the country and not president of the party. That is very important. He must move with speed to bring into the big tent millions of people who did not vote for him, or who do not think like he do. He must move with speed to curtail the forces, security forces, that need to respect the life of the people. My reaction, Byron, not Byron, Trevor, is that this stuff that happened between the airport and Nairobi did not have to happen. There are areas within the airport that are security zone. There should have been a dialogue between the organizer of the welcome party of Honorable Raila and the security forces, so that they can have harmonious relationship, which is welcoming him, and then their support place where they're going to gather. And the police will be around to deal with any eventuality. It didn't have to be tear gas. It didn't have to be live bullet. It didn't have to be thrown stone. And the worst thing, of course, is to watch a disciplined uniformed police person throwing stones. And given the reputation of how our police have been rated in Africa and in the world, you know, that's not where we want to be. We have to turn things around. But we have to go higher to find the person who order those kind of things, because the ordinary policeman did not go and, order. They were acting. But who ordered them? And therefore, that need to be a political decision. It need to be a parliamentary hearing. These people need to be in front of Kenya, in front of the camera, to answer for the charges of what happened. Yeah. And we need to be serious about harmonizing this country and bringing it together in order for us to now change the image. There is what is called externalities, which is the image we have created. Yeah. We have to change that image such that we can surge ahead in terms of international investment in our country and the society, how we look at each other.
All right. Dr. Mustafa, do we sometimes shoot ourselves in the foot? Like Professor is saying that standoff at the airport was not necessary. And also, are we ever going to see police taking responsibility?
We always shooting ourselves in the foot, Trevor. We always are shooting ourselves in the foot. First of all, the debate that we should be having from now henceforth, after the Supreme Court of Kenya ruling, upholding the election of His Excellency President Uhuru Kenyatta, is to have a process that we all feel that we belong to this country. That is the most urgent thing that we should now be working on. And then bring the other issues on board, perhaps at the same time. It just depends on how experts will guide us in that. What are the challenges that we need to prioritize to resolve the issues of land, exclusion, marginalization? Those are the issues that we must now bring to the table. As we do that, from as soon as, if I was Uhuru Kenyatta, as soon as I'm going to hold that Bible and swear, crack down hard on corruption, plunder, and looting of this country. Ask those people who think that in 2022, the presidency belongs to their community to actually apologize to Kenyans. The presidency does not belong to any individual or any community in advance. I should feel that I belong to this country, that I can vie to be the president of this republic in 2022, in 2027, that Brian can do the same, Professor can do, Musamali, any Kenyan can do that. But this kind of battering the presidency, that it should now revolve between a 1 or 2 or 3 or even 5 major communities, the Luo, Kikuyu, Kalenjin, Luya, Kamba. These are issues that are going to divide this country. And this kind of thinking, and by the way, this kind of thinking are perpetrated and engendered by tribal entrepreneurs in this country, because they feel like they have the numbers. A Samburu, a Turkana, a Somali, whoever can become a president of this country. And so the mindset has got to change. And the feeling, and this is what is leading many Kenyans to talk about self-determination and secession, is something that has got to be addressed by the President of the Republic of Kenya. The buck stops squarely on his desk. And we would like to see a different president who is not going to, he's not running for another 3rd term. He's not going to beg anybody to support him. We just want to see him working. I think an average Kenyan would like to see the president working that brings this country to a position where perhaps it was before, and even much better. He should shunt out all the tribal entrepreneurs, the looters, the corrupt, and work with people who are going to build this country. It's about his legacy now. And he needs to surround himself with people that are going to tell him the truth, the people who are not after, who are not just there to ingratiate themselves to the presidency. The people who will tell him, hey, look here, this is not going in the right direction. And it's up to the president then to take the decision.
And George, sometimes this, I want to take it away from the presidency to the security forces. Sometimes they have a very tough balance, because we've also seen, in all fairness, some of those protesters during that particular protest were armed. However, I was sitting here with one of the politicians, and they told me that the people who were armed and the people who invaded that peaceful procession were not their own. So then the argument still revolves around the security forces, because ideally they were supposed to protect the protesters and ward off the criminal gangs who would come into it. But how do they make that balance when they've all merged and everyone is armed and they're just trying to protect themselves?
Trevor, we need to look at the bigger picture here. And as Professor said, let us not look at the foot soldiers, the constables and the sergeants in the riot squad. We need to look at the command. In the first place, what happened was not supposed to happen in Because as Professor said, there's supposed to have been some kind of dialogue between the organizers of the march and the security forces. So what comes out clearly here is the independence of the National Police Service, the command level, what is happening up here. Because I think the decision that was taken to stop the march from the airport to Uhuru Park was a political decision. It was not a police operational decision. Because these people did what the law requires of them. They notified the Inspector General of Police, and according to information that we have, they were advised to give the same notice to the OCS Jomo Kenyatta International Airport Police Station, and that is what the law requires. So it was up to the responsibility of the OCS to organize with the planners on the security measures that were supposed to be put in place to ensure that we had a peaceful procession from JKIA to Uhuru Park. And what came out clearly is that the march was declared illegal, and the police were sent there to stop the march from taking place. And what we normally do in such cases, we call it a commander's appreciation. You are the commander of the riot squad that has been taken to JKIA. You look at the group that has assembled there, you realize you do not have numbers to deal with them. You make a very quick appreciation and say you can inform your bosses. I think the best thing to do from what I've seen on the ground is to allow this match to take place, but we need to set rules of engagement between us and the protesters. You don't need to disperse people forcefully when they have come there peacefully. And we can take an example of what happened in 2007. Superintendent Nthenge, he was in Mathare, very volatile situation, but he managed to talk to the young men. He convinced them, look here, we don't need to ban this country. And you saw what happened. Yeah? They downed their weapons, and everything was peaceful from there. I think somebody should have bought from that. Talk to these protesters, tell them, look here, boss, we are here for the purpose of this country, and we don't need to fight each other. And when you talk about the protesters arming themselves, I think this comes from what we've learned from the previous protests that have taken place. Because in all these protests, we've not seen the police coming in to provide security, but always we've seen police coming in without even warning, lobbing tear gas at the people who have assembled, start running battles. It happened at the GKIA, you saw. Yeah? The proclamation was not read. So the people always come with a mindset that we are going to meet resistance from the police. And the kind of radicalization we've witnessed recently is that the people have said, by all means, we have to achieve our end. And this is why now you'll find that they come armed, ready to confront the police, because they have learned from the past instances where police have always come in and used violence against people that are there assembled peacefully. Okay. So I think this is where now we need to learn that the police should not always go to such occasions ready to clobber people, but you can come in with a different strategy. Okay. Talk to the people, do a commander's appreciation, allow the procession to take place, give guidance on what is supposed to be done. And I think at the end of the day, you'll find that our demonstrations will now become less violent. Okay. So it all depends on the protesters and the police as well, to sit down and come up with an agreeable timetable of how they want to conduct their business.
All right. And Byron, when the citizenry decides that now it's a do or die and they're just going to confront the police, and the police are also throwing stones at citizens' vehicles, is this some level of frustration, or is it just lack of coordination, or basic lack of respect, or just partisanship?
It's a plethora of things, or catastrophic failure for that matter. But the first question should be, who's the bigger person here? You know, is it supposed to be the protesters or the police or the people that are charged with controlling? You know, like I said at the beginning, precipitous failure, like what you've witnessed in terms of, you know, the way that the control was put in place for to stop the procession from the airport, has a lot to do with disastrous patterns of behavior. And if you look at it, you know, the triangle is like that, and you have on one end people ensconced in their own world and possibly going down a very, very bad road for that matter. and we have a backing of an authority in terms of the report that was put forward the other day in terms of their capacity, processes, legitimacy, and outcomes. All these have a lot to do with, on the other end of the triangle, the very bad leadership, for that matter, or zombie attitudes that also keep that bad picture, of the reality in place. And then you have maybe flawed executive mindsets, so on the part of the leadership, the top leadership, and possibly broken communication systems, or vital communication systems. Perhaps me and you are sat somewhere banging our heads against a tree because we thought that kind of failure ought to have been controlled. There was just a given point where it ought to have, someone ought to have just stopped. Like, this is actually not going right. How do we pull out? And it has a lot to do with just at the conceptual stage where the operational planning was actually lost. As George introduced, any kind of operation is all dependent on how well they're actually conceived at the beginning. And there's a couple of factors. What's the size of the crowd that we'd be expecting? I know there was a lot of ingenuity in terms of people flying or driving to some outposts like Kisumu or Eldoret, taking flights back to JKIA, and which got the police flat-footed when they had a group basically chanting and singing songs when they had a barricade out at the entrance of JKIA. But that ought to have been captured, because we're not talking about some retired football players who come in to do some security job on hire. These are guys who've been trained for the trade. And so a commander sits down and appreciates the situation, as George has said, and comes up with a solid plan, guided by the expected outcomes, basically taking care of the intentions of whatever they're going to fight, for that matter, what size of the crowd, what capability. And this has a lot to do with what history also informs. Our misactions or missteps in the past as the police have led to now having, protesters coming out with twigs and stakes and whatever the kind of armament they're talking about. And I'm reminded at this stage about Kikuyu saying, which actually put it rightly, that a chicken might not be well in intention to actually poop inside the house, but because it's been accustomed to think that it cannot reach the latch at the end of the day. And this has been brought about by our failure to control, rioters in a way that would actually be in consistency with what we want to achieve at the end of the day. The populace need to be on board, they need to be on side, they need to be agreeable with whatever we do at the end of the day, because we're not acting out of the boundaries of what the country needs to be at the end of the day. We know for sure, and this was carried in the social media, pictures of, and I think factually so, of some very high value targets, or the principals for that matter, having their vehicles towed, and assassination kind of attempts have been floated about. If you look at that, if it actually went down, God forbid, we look at how that would have impacted national security in monumental ways. That is not what a commander sat somewhere and sending his men on the ground to deliver against a particular mission would want to have on his plate at the end of the day. So I think, and it has a lot to do with, maybe George may have a different opinion as to how the men did their job on the ground, but then leadership and psychologists put it this way, they call it emotional contagion, where the feelings of a particular leadership or the guys at the top get to bleed out and affect the guys at the bottom. So you see a general large-scale degradation of character and professionalism, where a commander can actually be caught on camera throwing a stone, and so the men are immediately encouraged to do the same. So it plays out in very dysfunctional ways, which the police have to critically address, especially against the backdrop of the report that we had on their performance.
All right. And Professor, when we see there was an attack in Lakisama where several people were killed, the residents there are saying that this is ethnic cleansing. The police come out and the first thing they say is that this has got nothing to do with ethnic clashes. However, we are still investigating this matter. If you're still investigating the matter, how do you automatically know it has nothing to do with ethnic cleansing?
Trevor, Mahatma Gandhi said it well. Politicization of ethnicity does not augur well for the development of democracy and the rule of law. Whether it is ethnic cleansing or not, people need to learn from Rwanda what happened. And those people, the leadership, that one way or another is engaged in creating that kind of environment, need to learn that they themselves cannot be safe. And once we destroy this country the way we know, once the lawless take over, then we simply become Somalia-like and no longer the country that we are proud of. And I don't think that any nationalist, any Kenyans, any proud person for this country, any person who want to see their children go to school and return home, who want look at development issue and opportunities that there is that the country can offer, will be sitting down comfortably and planning that kind of thing. Because whatever you do, you are asking for trouble. The other side will react the same way, and therefore degenerate and continue to degenerate. So my point here, Trevor, is election is over now for all intents and purposes. Let's sit back and soul search as individuals. I'm talking a lot to my students, and I'm hearing horrible stories. There are families that have been close together for years and now divided. Husband and wife not talking because of political reason. The neighbors who are not talking to each other. The little kids who are not playing with each other because their parents instructed them to. What are we trying to do? What good is it going to offer this country, Bosnia, or the crisis in the Middle East, which is destroying everything else? So every Kenyan is responsible for this. I don't care where you are sitting or where you come from. Every Kenyan is responsible for this, and the leadership that the President Uhuru, is going to collect around him are pivotal in moving us all along in order to retain and reflect back to what we ought to be.
All right. And Dr. Mustafa, when, from a security standpoint, when the police make that statement that we are investigating, shouldn't it then mean that everything is on the table, rather than ruling out one factor and saying that even though we're investigating, we know this is not ethnic cleansing? Because then automatically one side feels like these investigations are not going anywhere. It's going to go against us.
All factors, whenever an investigation is launched, everything should be at the table. All facts should be at the table, so that whoever is investigating isolate those important leading facts that would lead the detectives to a crime, actual crime committed, and not having others under the table, some stones unturned. Good detectives, good investigators consider everything and move to specifics. As to whether there is ethnic cleansing taking place, ethnic cleansing is such a strong word, Trevor. What we saw in Rwanda was ethnic cleansing. What we saw in Bosnia and Herzegovina was ethnic cleansing. And we've seen ethnic cleansing in some of the Asian countries. What we have in Kenya is more about exclusion, marginalization. And when we are talking about marginalization and exclusion, we shouldn't just be looking at the current political issues that are there. There's been marginalization and exclusion in this country since independence. And these are issues that we should not forget. Even as we open this Pandora's box and put everything on the table and say these are the issues that we should be discussing, we should not just look at the last 10 years. We need to look back to 1963 until today. I feel excluded as well. I've had to make so many rounds to Nyayo House. After this show, I'm going to Nyayo House to follow passports for my children who have to be vetted whether they are Kenyans or not. I'm Kenyan, of course. So the issue of exclusion and marginalization is so widespread in this country. And we should not, bring it down to positions that I must be the president or that community must provide a president for this country for us to feel that we belong. What we need as Kenyans are services. We need to, the state should be able to enfranchise everybody to be able to serve the country, to be able to be useful economically, socially, culturally, politically. This is the kind of state that we want, not one that is going to disenfranchise certain communities, and one that then is going to, if we are talking about exclusion, historical injustices, or political grievances that are there, we are looking at, because so-and-so has said that we feel excluded, then you only focus on that one community. We need to focus on all Kenyans and deal with the issues, Trevor.
All right. And George, you've been in the service before. With hindsight now, is this a lack of strategic thinking or lack of resources, or both?
Trevor, I think my answer will be very simple.
Yeah.
Politicalization of the police. We don't have an independent police service per se. We tried to have an independent police service in 2010 when we inaugurated the new constitution, and we said that the Inspector General should have security of general. We went to Parliament in 2014, removed that. We made the Inspector General a political appointee. So he will play to the whims of the politicians. He will play to the whims of the executive. And this is exactly why we are finding that there are some commands that are being given that are not good for the country. For example, when you say so-and-so should be stopped from getting into the country and being escorted by his supporters, I think that was not a security operational decision, but it was based on politics. And I think this is where the problem begins. And the reason why, for example, what we witnessed in Lakisama, Kawangware, we cannot say that it was ethnic cleansing. But what is happening is that we are playing bad politics in this country. We've made politics a zero-sum game. You have it, 100%. The other group feel defranchised, as Dr. Mustafa has said. And you will find that already we are talking about a certain tribe claiming the presidency in 2022. What about the others? And what we witnessed in Lakisama was a group of people who believe the presidency is theirs, coming out saying that we are going to protect the presidency. And we have another group that says that the elections were stolen from us, so we are going to fight to get into government. And this is where the problem comes in. And when we have a police force that is not independent, a police force that somehow plays some partisan politics or some partisan game, then we are in trouble. And that is why it's very clear. You don't need rocket science to know what happened in Lakisama. We are being told we are going to investigate. And we've never seen the results of these investigations. It happened in 2007, people were killed. 2008, people were killed. It happened in 2013. It has happened again in 2017. And from 1992, when we went multi-party, we've been witnessing these kind of killings, but so far nobody has been brought to book. So it means that the people that are planning these kind of attacks always feel protected by some powers to be or somebody somewhere. That's why they carry out these attacks without any worries. Remember, the indicators were already out. In Kawangware, people shared information with the police telling them that we've seen some youth being armed with the intention of carrying out attacks in this part of the city. The same happened to the people of Lakisama. They were calling me, telling me, George, we are in trouble here. We have seen a group of people that look like they are planning to carry out attacks on certain communities in this part of the city. The police had this information, yet they did nothing. So the problem here now is about policing per se. We need to have an independent police service, a police service that should be there for all Kenyans, not one that looks like it's skewed towards a certain community or certain political parties. And this is why you'll find that we have a radicalization of the youth. The youth feel like we are not being protected by the government, so we should arm ourselves and protect ourselves. As Byron put it, if somebody shoots at a leader's vehicle, somebody throws stones at a leader's vehicle, what does that, what picture is he bringing out to the supporters of this particular person? The people will say that now they have an intention of assassinating our leader. We must form ourselves into vigilante groups to protect our leaders. We are headed into that direction as a country, and I think we need to seriously have a conversation.
And Byron, when the police themselves ignore certain intelligence that has been given by the public, and of course, in all fairness, most likely they have thousands of information coming through. Well, how do they sift through which one to act on and which one to follow?
Okay, I mean, that question and a lot of others by implication is hardly a mechanical question. It revolves around, cognition. And so cognitive kind of complexity on the part of the police, which I think they're lacking out in, by a big margin. I mean, the score was an E, as we now know. To this end, I think we are certain and can confidently say that the police are brilliantly, for that matter, executing against the wrong visions. Intelligence sharing and analysis and dissemination for action, which is actionable intelligence at the end of the day, is not discriminative of source. And one of the richest sources of intelligence, as we know it, is basically the people who live within that space with the instigators and maybe the agents that threaten the peace and security of that particular space. But this is what we basically taken a shot at. The conduct of the police, I mean, dating back to when Kenya was born, if you have to get back to that point, has not inspired any optimism on the part of the general public, for that matter, the people they serve. It's all about service delivery. And I'm a bit discouraged to discuss the police without having a look at the organization as very high reliability. As I said the other day, this is not what you'd think of a grown-up salesperson at a street corner. And we should not sympathize with the police or the army person, for that matter, having been part of the force, or the most elite part of it, as it is. We shouldn't sympathize with them for doing their job. It's something that you've chosen for, and in most cases, it's something that you volunteered for. And there's a huge investment in making that particular person change and be customed or optimized for high-end delivery against certain missions. Intelligence gathering and action against the same is something that's requisite. But what we find, and you can take it back to what happened also, in the World Trade Center. Sometimes you find organizations, the way they are set up, sometimes the hierarchy in itself, so it's so hierarchical that potentially vital information does not get to that person that needs to act on it in time. Or at times, because of organizational politics, it doesn't actually get there. Sometimes it's because people lack incentives. They do not disturb the boss kind of mentality. Or at times, you get, like in the police force, I know few people that get in and they're properly, well-intentioned to actually do the right thing. But they set themselves up for failure because they find a system that's already failing, and they do not want to be seen as people who naively, flag maybe unimportant information, but they could actually be very important. Take an example of Garissa. A patroller was, going through town, and he got told by a girlfriend that the university is going to get attacked. But he knows for sure that some of the vehicles that had been, basically impounded at the bridge were said to be belonging to a woman or something that was a friend to the OCS or OCPD, for that matter. Now, that doesn't inspire any kind of or encourage that particular person to also pass that information up. And what happens? Catastrophe. So, it revolves around several factors, but which you can basically summarize as being those agents of failure, catastrophic failure, but obviously also being operationalized by spectacularly unsuccessful people.
All right. And Usha Jose is looking through your feedback here, and a lot of them are coming through. Usha, what are they saying?
Right, Trevor, they have a lot to say. Of course, you have discussed a number of topics, and they're speaking on the same. We have Mr. Karuga, who says, I'm going to the streets for mass action. In going to the streets for mass action, the denominator is common, to express feelings either in joy or anger. When it's the latter, the result is chaos and lawlessness, destruction. What is the police expected to do? We also have Alfred, who says police should have a better strategy of handling the protesters. They tend to use more force with an intention to harm the normal wananchi. We also have Kituku, who says police didn't make anybody vandalize business, especially along Airport North Road. They destroyed restaurants, soda depot, and boutiques. We also have Omondi, who says as long as one or two communities are more Kenyans than the other, solution to this problem will not be reached. Muhammad says, the Kenya Defence Forces suffer from tribalism, corruption, and all manner of atrocities, unlike the Zimbabwe Defence Forces that are patriotic and loyal to the people and constitution. We have Thomas, who says, however long it will take, we shall soon celebrate like the Zimbabweans. We also have Ben, who says, when people overcome their fear of death, they are unstoppable. NASA supporters have overcome their fear of tear gas. Sooner or later, their resolve will be unstoppable. We have Joe, who says the biggest problem with our nation is that the political class protect their demonstrators even when they are on the wrong. On live television, they cleanse any wrongdoing on the part of their people. We have MD, who says the current situation is as a result of blackmail, intimidation, and exclusivity. The government must follow the law and apply it equally. The law is not only enforced on the opposition. We have Joe, who says you cannot set rules of engagement with protesters who always end up rowdy, whether celebrating a win or a loss in the political arena. When Raila won the Supreme Court ruling, they banned property and stoned vehicles. Even now, they're still destroying property. We have Samuel, who says our security must be neutral to make sure that nobody from either side makes them or is involved in an act which can cause a breach of peace. We also have Kule, who says promotion in the police service today is anchored on political affiliation, and you expect the police to be independent? Never. And finally, we have Kirimu, who asks, does the number 999 work? This, I have to confess that I personally have never tried this number, but considering we do stories all the time about a fire, and then there was a problem with the ambulance, which was just within reach but somehow didn't make it in time, or it didn't have fuel or something, or things of the sort. And George, I was just wondering, does this number really work, 999?
We're told it works, but you try it.
Why don't you call now?
Right.
In fact, Usha, that's a good point to start from. You. When you go back into the gallery, you can actually just call and find out if it works. But it's a very tricky balance as well, because if it is an actual line for emergency, you'll be engaging it when maybe somebody else who's actually in an emergency would like to reach through. So it's a very counterproductive sort of thing. But as some people have tried it before, and they've confessed that it's not been working so far. But the main issue here is really partisanship, Professor. How should we be restructuring the police forces now? Now that already, even from the tweets they were reading, people already think they've taken sides.
Any Kenyans will be alarmed and very concerned the way our police has been rated in the world and in Africa. We are the last for many reasons. I think Botswana was number one, followed by Rwanda. And then we are dead last. Yeah. We are pouring incredible resources into our police department. We have engaged in countless hours of an attempt to reform the police. There are about reports that have been written. I think both George and Byron are pretty familiar with all these things. The question comes, are we very serious about reforming our police system? Or are we doing this to, as an exercise of time to just pass the buck over to somebody else? Because we know that countries that have taken serious police reform are reformed, and the police are disciplined, and police are the force that relate to the people. If you are in Sweden, you understand that. They have reformed police in LA, California, which used to be really a rogue environment, and its control. South America, there are a number of reforms that have been undertaken from Brazil to all others that have worked, and people are moving on. We cannot throw good product into a fire and expect it to move. The answer is political, political will. to say we are going to reform, we are going to make it, and then respect it for what it is. If the police was supposed to be independent, then why are we changing it so that we can control it? And then somebody else come in and change it. So what is the rank and file police to do? They're told do this or not do that. That's where we are. And then we have this thing called neighborhood policing, which works. It works if we're serious about it. It is the people. It is, if you take the number of Kenyans in total population, compare with the number of police, those few people cannot control these many millions of people. And therefore, it is the people. It is the people which a neighborhood watch. It is the people that appreciate the disciplined men and women, that they belong to us. Utumishi kwa watu, that's the name. And they're called for that for a reason. And unless there's the structure from the top hierarchy, from the political standpoint, legislative, we're serious about this reform, let's not talk about it.
All right, Dr. Mustafa, the utumishi kwa wote aspect, is it even there really? Or is it just on paper?
It seems that it's partly on paper, and we should, Kenyans should expect better, and Kenyans should demand better of their police. We have to demand that the utumishi kwa wote, and this is the slogan for the police service, is applied across the board. The police should not be misused to protect certain individuals and leaving other Kenyans vulnerable. The police should not be used to target a section of Kenyans. And it goes beyond just that. It's the service that the police should be offering to Kenyans should be that which helps us secure our communities, secure ourselves, secure the country. Today we cannot speak of that, of the current police. The fact that it's ranked third from below, from the bottom, is a pointer to something that should be done. The reforms and modernization programs that Professor Midamba is talking about, I think my colleagues talked about last week, is something that the police has got to pay specific attention to.
Okay. George, how do we revert that slogan utumishi kwa wote and make it actually mean what it's supposed to mean? How do we change the face of the forces?
Trevor, I think that was formed the basis of Agenda 4 during the Kriegler Commission's hearings, sittings and hearings. And it's from here that we said now we need to change the force from the Kenya Police Force to a national police service. And we've seen attempts being made to achieve the recommendations of Agenda 4, where we're told that we need to vet the police officers, we need to equip them. We've seen vehicles being bought. We need to equip them. We've seen the APCs being bought by the government. But I think the government is well-intentioned in reforming the police. But from my personal experience, I think the problem has always been the top police command. We have people in the police that are not ready to change with the times. And this is where actually the problem is. We cannot blame the rank and file because they take command from somewhere. These orders come and they must be obeyed by the rank and file as per the National Police Standing Orders. And if you look at the way things are being done, look at the way we've been recruiting. This mass recruitment of people, training them, we're not looking even at the quality of training that you're giving out there. And I said last week, we have, for example, the GSU training school that could only accommodate 350, now accommodating 1,500 people. You go to Kenya Police College, Kiganjo, it's supposed to accommodate 1,500 recruits at any given time. Now they have more than 3,000. Are we looking at the quality of officers that we're churning out here? Even at the recruitment point, are we getting the right people into the service? People that will go there with the intention to serve. But if generally you look at the picture, is that people get into the police service because it's just a job like any other job. They are there to enrich themselves. And when they get in, we don't get the service that we deserve.
Okay.
I've visited police stations and I've seen the commercialization of services.
Yeah.
You will not go and make a report at the police station and expect to get any services, any proper investigations being done on the report that you've made. But somebody will tell you, you know, you need to facilitate us. I think there's a lot that needs to be done to make the police people-friendly, to make the police give service to all.
Right.
And as I said, we made so many steps ahead, and then we reversed all this when now we made the police accountable to the politicians.
Okay.
The politicians will misuse the police. The politicians will always call the shots. And at the end of the day, the common mwananchi will not get this utumishi kwa wote, because basically the service will be skewed towards certain areas and to achieve certain ends.
Okay.
That is where the problem lies.
Byron, finally, we're running out of time here.
Okay, utumishi kwa wote is laughably, I think it's laughable and it's ironical to be used in the same page with our police force. I think much earlier when we had some of these psychological, socio-psychological phenomena play out, I think in the streets of New York in 1964, when Genovese Kitty was actually butchered right in front of everybody. Latane and David came up with the bystander effect, which actually plays out dysfunctionally when there's a lot of ambiguity, diffusion of responsibility, and lack of cohesiveness. In our case, I think if you were to sit before, say, a counselor, and it's clear to them that your life is absolutely in tatters, so there's it's in chaos. The first thing that people look at is for you to take very drastic action, revolutionary so, to get to a point where you can play, meaningfully in life. Now the police are at that stage. A score of an E is not a happy one, and what they need to actually do with themselves is to take very critical look at themselves, internal processes, because at the end of the day, however ambitious the strategies and visions are set for the police to work with or play with, without a well-prepared workforce, it will be, like David and Babe said, at that point in time, that intentions without proper action are actually worse than useless.